Welcome to DABCC Radio,
where smart people listen.
Virtualization and Cloud Talk.
Featuring cutting-edge solutions from the hottest companies around the globe.
Broadcasting from the DABCC offices in sunny Sarasota, Florida.
Surrounded by computers, books, and Legos. Your host, Douglas Brown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DABCC Radio. I could not be happier. Today we have Chris Fleck from Citrix with us, and if you're not familiar with Chris, he has the best job in the world. He heads up sort of their emerging ideas department. That's the way I describe it. Chris will explain more in detail. He's also one of the guys that was really pushed and created the Raspberry Pi with somebody in his team he'll tell the story. And I couldn't be happier to have him on the line. We did a meetup with him, an IGEL community meetup with him a couple months ago, and chatted about all that. But the one thing we could not talk about was IGEL's Raspberry Pi. And IGEL has since that meetup, just a few weeks ago, IGEL announced that we will now be supporting the Raspberry Pi with our IGEL operating system, IGEL OS, and that'll be released on the 25th of February, and I just could not be a happier man. I've always wanted this because I'm a big fan of Workspace Hub. I'm a big fan of what Chris and his department and his team is doing with casting, and I think it fills a gap in the complete picture of IT, and the future is very bright in that area and beyond, and the other area things that he wants to do, and we'll talk about all that today. So I could not be happier to have Chris Fleck with us to discuss the Raspberry Pi, Citrix, IGEL relationship, all that, and hopefully a lot more. So with no more further ado, here's my interview with Chris Fleck from Citrix. Okay, Chris, thanks so much for doing this. You know, we had you on a meetup, a couple months ago, and we couldn't talk about this subject. So I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today and get to talk about the good old Raspberry Pi. So first of all, thank you very much for taking the time to do this.
Hey, thanks, Doug. Yeah, that was a little bit frustrating. So I'm happy that things progressed as we had planned, and really excited that we've got some new news to share, right? And I guess some of it's out there, but for those that are maybe listening new, haven't heard of what's happening in this space.
You got it. I couldn't be happier. I just couldn't be happier. And a few people at IGEL are like, wait a second, why are you doing the meetup so soon? Why didn't you, do something about the Pi? And it's like, then we'll do multiples. Anytime we can get Chris is a great time with me. So I really had fun. And for the folks listening to this, if you didn't hear our meetup, I'll put it in the show notes because we talked about all sorts of different things with Chris, and it was just a lot of fun. I'll tell you what, that hour flew. So what do I say? Okay, so for those who might not be familiar with you, who are you and what do you do over at Citrix?
Sure. Hi. I am Chris Fleck. I'm a technical fellow, VP of Emerging Technologies at Citrix, and been around for 18 years. So I've been around for a while at Citrix since we were a bit of a one-trick pony. So now we've got a number of them, and we. What I look at, my team, as well as I look after the broader innovation pipeline. So doing things that are not necessarily in the roadmap, looking beyond the roadmap or adjacent to it, and looking for opportunities, talking to the community, talking to customers, talking to our sales engineers, et cetera, just trying to understand the jobs to be done of the general IT population out there that is challenged, I think, with new problems all the time, and trying to translate that into opportunities for Citrix where we can adapt what we've got or come up with new things that can satisfy those kind of future requirements. So that's what I do.
You got it. You, as I always like to say, what do I say? You have the best job in the whole wide world, right?
Well, it's rough, but somebody's got to do it. And yeah, so some of the one of the benefits is I get to play with the cool new toys, and so I guess that's one of the ones we're going to talk about today. But
You got it. You got it.
That's definitely a perk.
So in many ways, I can almost, is it fair to say you're sort of the father of the Raspberry Pi thin client? Would that be, I think that's a fair statement, right?
Well, I can't say I was the father of it, but I guess I can take credit for making it happen. It actually came from one of our engineers back when the Pi 2 first came out, where it came out of a hackathon. And actually, that's part of what I do is, I've got a small team, but then I look after, the entire kind of innovation pipeline for the company. And one of the things that we do on a regular basis is we encourage employees to go build something cool. And it can be, just a new feature of an existing product, or it could be something completely brand new or a new offering. And so one of our engineers, Mohammed in the UK, actually, when the Pi 2 came out, he was already an expert in our Hdx and ICA technology. But he basically made it work with the Pi 2. And he showed me and got my attention. And so the Pi 2, as you may recall, it was functional, but it really was underpowered. So it wasn't quite powerful enough. The proof of concept worked with ICA client, a modified ICA client for it. But it wasn't until the Pi 3 came out that it became a practical endpoint device for HDX and for, actually advocating to the general population. And then, so that was the Pi history. But then what we did is we had another parallel project, again, another hackathon originating project that was the Workspace Hub technology and casting. And that one wasn't necessarily tied to the Pi originally, but it was basically providing the ability to have a live session, a live Citrix session, a virtual session, desktop, or an app, and allow you to rapidly move it from whatever device you're on, such as an iPad or an iPhone or something, to another device, and without having to re-authenticate. And the two ways to do that. And what we did is we combined that effort with the Pi effort and translated that into the Workspace Hub. And that's pretty much how the Workspace Hub based on Pi has come about.
That was going to be my second question. Can you give us some history on it? You just did. So as always, you're one step ahead of me. So that said, you mentioned the Pi 3, are really being the first one that was powerful enough. And now we have the Pi 4, which is really a pretty solid little board, right?
Absolutely. And so, yeah, the Pi 4 is incredibly powerful. The price performance is just unbeatable. And, so an improvement there, also the big step up from the 3 to the 4 was, aside from the increase in processor and memory, is having native onboard dual monitor. And so, we got Eben Upton, the real creator of the Pi. We got him involved, and I went and met with him a couple of times in Cambridge, and got him excited about what we were doing, because, as you probably know, the Pi got popular as a education device, primarily a low-cost device that pretty much every kid could afford, or every school could afford to, teach their kids computer science and programming on the device. And so it wasn't originally intended as an enterprise endpoint or a thin client, but once we demonstrated the feasibility of it, we got the Pi Foundation involved, and Evan, the CEO and the real founder of the Pi, got excited about it. And one of the things I shared with him, based on the customer feedback around the Pi 3, was the real requirement for the dual monitor. And so, he actually changed their design for the Pi 4 to accommodate that. And
wow.
So we were real happy about that. He actually, there were a couple of articles out there posted. You can see him in the Guardian and some other spots where he basically gives credit to and acknowledges, this collaboration between the Pi Foundation and Citrix to target the enterprise with the Pi platform, and doing, adding the second monitor onboard capability as part of that.
You got it. It's definitely, so many folks within the Citrix world are, in general, use multiple monitors, especially nowadays with work at home. I mean, I have 2 monitors, so I don't know how many people have 2 monitors. I'm all techies too, I guess, but it's definitely.
It's really, a default workstation environment for a lot of companies that we're finding as well. And that's what really drove it.
Well, you mentioned price performance. I hear a lot, especially now that I've heard it for many years, but now that IGEL has announced we're going to be supporting the Pi here on the 25th, we're releasing it. And can a Pi really give you the experience that a desktop hardware can? Can you maybe talk a bit about that? Sure.
Well, I literally have. I kind of go back and forth between a bunch of devices, right? So right now I'm talking on a Mac Pro, but I've got a PC for testing and for doing some work with. And what I did is I literally unplugged. I kept the PC sitting there, and I unplugged the monitor and keyboard and mouse and plugged them into the IGEL new device, right? The in-computing Citrix IGEL Workspace Hub, and that's what I've been using. It's kind of funny. I'll have to post a picture. I don't know if I put it on Twitter or not yet, but I will. Is the PC is now it makes kind of a good stand for my setup, where the Pi is just sitting on top of this floor-mounted PC. So it's remarkable, and obviously it helps to have a good-sized VDI, which I've got running through HDX and through Zen Desktop or Citrix Virtual Desktop, and it really is remarkable. It's entirely usable from home every day, and that's part of my routine. So yeah, I basically, when I'm sitting down, I'm at my Pi, and when I'm standing, then I have a pedestal for my stand-up desk with a Mac rigged up, and so I kind of go back and forth between those two. And then I use casting, actually going back and forth too.
Well, can you explain how do you? I have a bunch of questions about give us some examples of real world experience, uses of casting and Workspace Hub. I know you have probably a bunch of really interesting, cool ones, but how are you doing that?
Yeah, so a couple scenarios. One is when I want to take what's on my Mac, and so I can basically, from Workspace app on my Mac, and if you're not aware, it's actually there already. Anybody that's got Workspace app has this already. There is, in the advanced features, a setting where you have to enable it because it's off by default, but you basically just enable casting, Citrix casting, and it will discover any devices, any Workspace hubs on the same network, and allow you to remote the screen. So anything that's on your Mac screen can now be displayed on the whatever you've got your Workspace hub plugged into. And so sometimes I've got it, or typically I've got it just plugged into a big widescreen display. But I actually, once in a while, I'll use it. I'll plug it into a TV as well, the Workspace Hub into the TV, and then I can cast my Mac up to the TV, so it becomes effectively an alternative to an Apple TV in that scenario. It definitely works that way really well in conference rooms. So there's lots of scenarios where companies they'll have a thin client hooked up to a big display, or they'll have a PC hooked up to a big display, or they'll have an Apple TV, or sometimes they'll have all three of those. And then you got to deal with a collection of cables and dongles and plugging stuff in and seeing what works and doesn't work. And meanwhile, if you've got a Workspace Hub plugged into the big display, you can just transfer take whatever's on your screen and display it up to the big screen, and that works from either a Mac or from a Windows, like a Surface is a great device to use that with. So that's kind of the conference room use case. Then you've got like the more of the office or workstation use case, where it will basically it can do the same thing, but what more likely, or at least what I use it for, is just to reduce the friction in terms of going from the device to device and logging in, logging off, logging in. And what you can do simply is transfer a session that you've got running, for example, on your iPad, and you can, with two fingers, just swipe it up, and it will connect and move that session immediately to the Workspace Hub and show it on the big screen. And then you can use the big keyboard and mouse as well with it. So it's, makes it dramatically easier to log in or effectively eliminate the need to log in to that second device.
Very cool. You mentioned MacBook Pro. Do you have an ARM one yet, Chris?
No, I don't. But it's in the queue. Yeah, definitely want to get my hands on that. Do you?
I don't. I'm going to wait until the M2. So I really, what I want is, especially work from home now, but I work from home, so I'm thinking I'm going to do the new iMac, at least what they're showing in the, Mac rumors or what have you, where you see this beautiful display and edge to edge with what I imagine they'll call the M2 ARM. So that's the direction I'm waiting for that one. So whenever they pop that, it's I'll pre-order.
Yeah, it is appealing, and everything I've been hearing about the power on the M1 is remarkable. So
I hear the same thing, and I'm quite jealous, but I'll wait and I'll get it when it's. I'm surprised I haven't done it, but I'm going to wait.
Right.
So that said, yeah, well, boy, there's so many questions I want to ask. So let's talk a bit about IGEL in the Pi. So, sure. When I joined IGEL, 4 years ago, there's a couple things I wanted IGEL to do, and one of those was to support have a Raspberry Pi, right? Throw IGEL OS on the Pi. And over the years, they always said, well, it needs to be enterprise. It needs to be enterprise. IGEL's about enterprise. It's about giving a great experience, the best hardware, blah, 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 blah. And which is definitely the case, right? And then, as you mentioned, the 3, now the 4 Raspberry Pi board is definitely enterprise quality. That said, where do you see a company like, IGEL sort of, I wouldn't say late to the game, but, there's others doing it. You guys have been doing it for a while. There's a few others out there. Where do you see IGEL fitting into the sort of Raspberry Pi landscape?
Sure. No, great question. Well, so I think the easiest, entry is going to be existing IGEL customers. There's lots of existing IGEL customers that are expanding their footprint, and they're, covering more users, more use cases, and we've seen a existing kind of requirement demand when we've shown off the Pi and the Workspace Hub features, and they say that's great, but we use IGEL. Can we do it with IGEL? So this is a great answer for them, obviously, is they can expand their footprint. at a low cost using the same IGEL management stack and everything that goes with IGEL. So I think that's a really positive, easy target and or easy adoption scenario. I think this whole work from home scenario is, I think, increasing the opportunity for thin clients in general, but you want to make them low cost thin clients, and that's appealing to lots of companies that don't necessarily want to give laptops, because laptops, I think knowledge workers that move a lot are probably going to want a laptop or have a laptop, but there's a lot of task workers that used to be in an office that now are working from home that don't really need to be mobile, and they may even need two monitors like we talked about. And the Pi is really a good platform for them, a good endpoint. And having IGEL to manage those endpoints is really important to, the same set of customers that we cater to that are really concerned about security and endpoint security and, what devices are connecting to their network, et cetera. I think those are a good target. And then there's when we finally get back to the office, right? I'm still working from home, and it looks like we're going to be working from home until third quarter at least. But there's companies that are, depending on where you are in the world, there's companies that are moving back to the office already. But the office, I think, is forever changed. I think the number of organizations, the customers I talk to that are, moving away from dedicated offices and dedicated workstations to hybrid scenarios where employees are going to come in a couple days a week versus 5 days a week. And it just doesn't make sense to have dedicated offices and dedicated workstations for them anymore. They can literally, cut their office real estate bills in half or less. And the way they're going to do that is by making all of it hot desking. Basically, unassigned seating is going to be the standard, not just it was a niche. It was, I think a minority for expensive real estate kind of office locations that were starting to do unassigned seating. But I think that's going to be the norm. Once people get back to the office, it's going to be unassigned. And as soon as you go unassigned, that's where thin clients are just a perfect fit for that, to say, okay, well, it makes sense to have monitors in there. It makes sense to have a full-size keyboard. And if you have a full-size keyboard and a monitor, well, you might as well put a thin client in there as well, right? Those traveling or hybrid employees, they may or may not bring their laptop back to the office with them. But if you're going to have these unassigned workstations all over the place, why not just put a thin client there so that you can use it with a laptop or without a laptop? You can just leave the laptop home and be productive. But it's actually another use case that we see as well, which is where the Workspace Hub feature can effectively make the thin client, the device, a wireless dock. So you can basically use that. You can have one display hooked up to your Workspace Hub, and then your laptop as your primary, and you just pull up, grab a workstation and sit down, and you've got your laptop open with your laptop display as the primary display, but then you can have the Workspace Hub acting as a second monitor.
You got it. It makes total sense. I want to ask a very basic question, and this is something I actually been asked this myself many times, but I'd like to ask you because you're the professional, and you throw around the word workspace hub and casting. In many ways, we see them as the same thing. Can you tell us what is workspace hub compared to casting? What is casting compared to workspace hub? Does that question make sense?
Sure. Yeah, it does. And it probably needs some elaboration. And so, the Workspace Hub is a device that we've designated with the right software stack, becomes this, what we see as more than just a thin client. It's a thin client, yes, but it does a whole lot more. And you can view it as an enterprise IoT device. You can view it as kind of like the ultimate end user computing device. And one of the features and a significant feature of Workspace Hub and part of that software stack is this casting capability. So the casting is this function that resides, it's a feature of the Workspace app, as well as a software service that runs on the Workspace Hub. And that allows the transfer of the image of what's being displayed on the laptop up to the Workspace Hub, or it allows actually the transfer of a full session even from another device. And so think of it as the Workspace Hub is is tied to it's the device definition, and casting is a feature of that.
Makes total sense.
Does that help?
Yeah, I totally get it. It's like I said, most Citrix customers know this, but now that the IGEL's starting to talk about it, I hear from some customers say, well, okay, what exactly is this? So I sort of wanted to clarify it for those guys.
And so let me drill into that some more, because if they're asking what exactly is this, it warrants more conversation. And so there's actually two functions that we provide under call it the umbrella of Citrix casting. One of which is, like I described earlier, where you can take whatever's on a laptop screen and just cast it to the Workspace Hub, to that device, which could now be an IGEL device. And so that works with or without the Hdx session. It's pretty much, it's more like an Apple TV in that case. It's just grabbing whatever's on the screen and moving that display. And kind of like AirPlay. So there's that feature. And then there's another feature that's, so this other feature within the casting umbrella is more of a session transfer, where you could basically, you can be logged into Workspace app on your phone and then just have it actually start where the Hdx session actually starts on the Workspace Hub. And so what's happening there is we're taking the token that you authenticated with on the Workspace app on your phone, and we pass that token securely to the Workspace Hub, and it launches there. So in that case, you're not moving the video display. You're actually just starting it kind of like the old ICA files, where you could kind of move them around.
Sure.
Think of it like that, except securely with a token, and you're effectively starting the session on the Workspace Hub.
Yeah, that's really powerful. That's, you walk into a conference room, you just move the whole thing on over to that other device, right?
Yep.
Or from your, let's say your phone, for example, you're doing that conference on your phone as you're driving because you're running late.
Yep.
And then you sit down at your desk and boom, everything just moves over nicely.
Exactly. Yeah. It can be a click, or it can actually, we can actually have it work with Bluetooth as well. So
cool.
If you just, all you have to actually do is put your phone in proximity. If you have this the Bluetooth enabled and you have the feature enabled, you could just basically place your phone near the Workspace Hub and have it authenticate. So almost like a tap and go kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now the reality is what we found is that works and it's really cool, but there's a lot of variability in Bluetooth. And so the reality is what we find is, sometimes it takes a second, which is great. And sometimes it takes 10 seconds just because of the Bluetooth variations, between devices and other Bluetooth devices within range and those kind of things. And so it might take 5 seconds, it might take 10 seconds. So the connection time is somewhat variable when you use Bluetooth instead of a definitive button press or basically a feature. But what we recommend and what we use it for, the Bluetooth, is the disconnect. Because when it disconnects, you don't care whether it takes 1 second or 5 seconds. Basically what happens is you just grab your phone and you walk away, and your session will follow you. It'll disconnect from the Workspace Hub. So it's a great security feature.
You got it. You got it.
It's no thinking about it, no gestures, nothing.
You got it. No, that's really neat. I've always liked that. I'm so, like I said, it's something I've wanted to see in the IGEL ecosystem for quite some time now, and I'm tickled that we have this as an offering. And the in-computing box, I have one sitting here myself, and it's quite nice. And to be honest with you, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, so it's kind of cool. I'm in this habit already. So I've got right? I got a Tesla, right? So I
sure.
need all the cool new toys. And so that's one of the things you get spoiled with completely is, you walk up to it and you don't even need a key. You just have your phone. And when you walk away, the same thing. You don't need to turn it off. You just walk away. And that works great, except when you drive something else. And then when you walk away, you find out you left the car running in the public parking lot for 20 minutes, unlocked and running. And so this is a great analogy for that.
I had that. I don't know if you probably don't remember this, but I bought a Lexus years ago. I wanted to be just had some kids. I wanted to be a family guy, and I was going to buy a Lexus, and then I went over to, I think it was a CTP meeting, and you drove with me over to the restaurant, and I got out of the car, and it had the new fancy fob where, it shuts itself off, all this stuff, right? Yep. And I was driving over, and I told you, and I said, I keep getting out of this car and leaving the car running and going to the restaurant. Well, we went into the restaurant. I came back and the car was running.
There you go. Right.
So I know exactly what you mean. In fact,
right.
I hated it so much. I gave the car to my father and I bought a BMW.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I got rid of the car.
Yep. The walk-away thing is a big deal, and the security guys love it, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys have also Citrix has been working, or maybe I should say IGEL's been working with Citrix folks on our development. Can you share, have we been able to help you guys? Can you share any insights there that's, officially allowed to be shared?
I'm sorry, on which feature are you talking?
Just the IGEL implementing, the Citrix piece into the IGEL operating system on the Pi.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's been an exciting project for us and actually for my team. So the original developer of the casting feature, Jacob Summers, has been working with the IGEL team to effectively make sure that the stack, the services that we provide for casting and the other Workspace Hub features are able to be consumed and leveraged in the IGEL implementation of Pi. Then there's also the Hdx optimization. So the work that Mohammed originally did that has evolved to really leverage the onboard computing that the Pi has, the video offloading And so what we're doing is we're not just using the server resources, we're actually offloading some of the video requirements to the Pi to improve the performance further. And so both those things, the Hdx optimization and the casting, are important components that we've been working with your team, with the technical team at IGEL to really get implemented and make sure that it's a great, again, what we look at it as that ultimate end user computing device.
You got it.
Then there's another feature we haven't talked about yet that I think it will be again in this back to office scenario potentially exciting and useful is the IoT kind of function. So we've got the ability to assign webhooks to individual Pis and securely transfer the webhooks so that things like sensors can be connected, presence sensors, presence detection. That there's things, for example, in this back to office scenario where everybody's got a unassigned seating. You want to be able to, look at an app, for example, to see where's their open seating versus, going to a place and having to look for it. You'd be able to, based on live sensors, see what's happening. There's other things like that I think are going to be interesting, having this IoT functionality built into the base image. And so, we're looking forward to what companies come up with there.
You got it. I think the IoT piece is definitely interesting. I know IGEL, we've talked a little bit publicly, and the only thing I know is what we have talked about publicly is, is that we look at what we do and the abilities, the great, amazing abilities we have within our management team piece, and of course our Linux operating system to sort of leverage that into the growing IoT world, and that's definitely exciting. That said, any plans for 64-bit version? I have to ask that.
Yeah, right. So
you knew who was coming.
Yeah, right. So is it is it out there on our to-do list? Yes. Don't have any schedule for it. And the initial, the testing that we've done hasn't shown a big boost, even though it sounds like there should be a big boost in performance, but what we have found so far is we haven't seen that big a boost. And so, keep asking. That's okay. If we get enough customers asking, and partners will help prioritize. But as of now, we haven't seen the need for it.
So that's very interesting because, so it's not the lack of desire, it's the lack of requirement.
It's compared to everything else.
Sure.
So if resources were not constrained, sure, we would do it as soon as it came out, right? But the same resources are doing other priority kind of projects and so forth. So
sure.
It just has to factor into what are the trade-offs.
You got it. That's something I'll never forget when I joined Citrix. Arlo Pranios taught me about that. We were having a conversation. I think I've talked about this in podcasts before for my longtime listeners, but about the different features in XP feature release 1, believe it or not. And I like this one feature, and he's like, "Really, you like that one?" And it wasn't the best feature, and it was probably the one that should have been yanked, right, for something other more pressing. And as an engineer, you don't realize that, there's something that, you have a list of features, and everyone wants everyone, but there's only so many you can put in there. So, it's very interesting. Software is a interesting thing. So engineers don't understand it because if it was up to us, the product would never be released because it's never perfect, right?
Well, exactly. That's right. It just keep adding more features, which
you got it. Which would be a great product. It just never see the light of day, but we'd be happy. So that said, we started going down the futures path. Is there anything else you could talk about, in the future of the Pi? It seems pretty baked right now, but what other crazy ideas, not crazy in a mean way, but, that you have for the future?
Well, I think there's more, and I talked about the use case around the docking station, but I think there's probably more we can do there, given that there's going to be more. I think there's going to be more, unassigned seating and workstations everywhere that anybody can go grab, right? Or maybe you have to reserve them ahead of time. But again, that there's an opportunity right there to say, okay, is this workstation reserved or not? So you should be able to look at the screen that's maybe unoccupied, right? If there's a row of workstations and you see somebody not sitting at one, right now it would probably just have a screensaver up, right? Like whatever IT has for the kind of like the security screensaver up there. Well, it would be nice to be able to show, for example, on that, instead of a screensaver, hey, this workstation's reserved for Doug Brown at 10 o'clock or something like that.
Oh, that's cool.
For example, right? I mean, so I think there'll be a number of use cases around the this device becoming that de facto workstation device, so that all those unassigned seating scenarios and reservation scenarios and just flexible office space kind of things will work better. Because today, what do you get, right, is sometimes you'll have you might have a display and a HDMI cable, but now everybody's got these USB-Cs. So now you have to have dongles, right, for your laptop, and then the dongles are missing. Or we see lots of scenarios where companies might have thin clients in those workstations, but then somebody comes with a laptop, and either they stay hunched over on their laptop and they got one or two big displays right in front of them with screensavers running, or they unplug one of the, they unplug the cable from the thin client, and then they walk away and they leave it that way. And, so then that translates to a support call, and because whoever comes up next thinks the thin client doesn't work. There's a bunch of scenarios that I think we can still improve in that hybrid work office environment.
Very cool. Now, you mentioned that, thanks to you and your team, that the Pi now has dual support. If you had a wish, would there be any wishes you would like for the Pi hardware itself?
So, not that I'm ready to share.
Okay. That's fair enough. But that actually makes me happy, because that means there's something that you want, but you won't tell us because you're doing it.
Yeah, there you go. And the good news is, Eben, Upton, the CEO of Pi Foundation, is a great collaborator now. And so, we're definitely want to continue. The Pi is amazing. Most people don't know. The last I saw, I think there's 35 million of these sold. It's the third most popular computing platform out there, and it's like just incredible the traction this thing has gotten, and it's going to continue, right? I mean, it's the perfect disruptor. It's like, I don't know if you and I have talked about this or not, but I'm a big Clay Christensen fan, and he's the guy that came up with the original disruptive innovation, and he wrote the first book on Innovator's Dilemma, and then a whole series of books. He passed away recently, a year or two ago, unfortunately, but I'm a big fan of his, and went through some of his training, and he actually had him come and engage with Citrix back years ago. And so, I mean, he is the father of innovation. And so met with him a couple of years back, and I told him what we were doing with the Raspberry Pi. And at the time, the Pi Zero had just come out, and described it to him, and talked about how the Pi, it fits this pattern of PCs and the whole PC evolution, where it used to be the case where you could continue to add features and speed to PCs and continue to grow the market. But once the technology got to a certain point, people didn't care anymore what the speeds and feeds were, right? Because nobody, it used to be when you went from Pentium 1 to Pentium 2 to Pentium 3, all of that, made a huge difference. But now it makes a difference to designers and gamers, but kind of nobody else. And so, and that's where like the thin clients had this opportunity to disrupt the PC world, where you could have a lower cost and a more manageable, more secure device instead of a PC. And that started gaining traction and capturing a lot of the business market. And then along comes the Pi at an even lower cost point, which can actually disrupt, again, that whole PC computing paradigm. And so, so Clay Christensen actually I gave him my Pi Zero, and he started using it in one of his Harvard classes where he was teaching disruptive innovation. And so that was kind of a cool event for me.
That's neat. That's very neat. That's very neat. I miss all that stuff, Chris. Pre-COVID, you would always do these neat things. I don't think I ever attended one though, but I always remember you telling me about them. But I was 4 hours away with kids, but I'd see the videos online and what have you. But you would always bring in great guys. You brought Scully in once, right? And
I had Scully come talk twice, actually.
Twice.
Scully, had him. Had the mother of the motherboard. She actually designed the motherboard. So just this morning, by the way, somebody I had once is a guy named Dave Bradley, Dr. Dave, and I literally just saw him this morning. So I instead of commuting, I try to get out on my bike early at sunrise every morning.
Oh, nice.
And so I just saw Dr. Dave down the road in Deerfield, and Dr. Dave is the inventor of Control-Alt-Delete.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so he's one of the 12 engineers that designed and developed the first IBM PC in Boca Raton. He wrote the firmware, and he tells this awesome story about coming up with Control-Alt-Delete, which was, it was basically a utility for himself. So he built it because he was the one developing the firmware, and he would constantly have to reboot the PC that the prototype PC he was working on. And what would happen is it took a long time to reboot, and they would the power supplies were still under development, and they would fail from really frequent reboots. And so he basically came up with this Control-Alt-Delete keyboard sequence, which he thought like he could just bury in the firmware and nobody would ever see it. nobody would ever accidentally do that, right? You wouldn't just come across that. And he did it for himself initially, then he did it for the testers to help with things. And then it turned out that, once the PC was released, he never took it out of the code, but they didn't intend it to be a feature. But if you recall, right, back in the early days of Windows, the PCs used to hang all the time, right? You do whatever. It was just, the memory leaks and so forth. The PC would hang, and you could force rebooting it, or then people started doing this Control Alt Delete scenario, and then the IBM support team started doing it, and then the documents team started documenting it. And now think about how many people in the world have done Control Alt Delete, how many times in their life, right?
Oh, it turned into how you log into. I think it was NT was the first one that you would Control Delete to get to the login screen, right?
Yep. Yeah,
And
it's still there for some of the, like if you want to change your keyboard, right, or your password and the Windows login.
You got
and so
it.
yeah, that's Dr. Dave. I just saw him this morning. So
that's so
that's
cool.
kind of cool.
And then we affectionately call it the 3-finger salute.
Yeah, exactly. There was actually an event that he was on once years ago that had it had Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Dr. Dave, talking about early PC days. And the I think it was what was his name? The Wall Street Journal guy.
Walt Mossberg?
Yeah, Walt Mossberg. I think he may have been the moderator. And he said to Dave Bradley, so, is it true that you're the inventor of Alt Control Delete? And he laughed, and he kind of told the story, and he said, yeah, well, I invented it, but, and he points to Bill, and he says, Bill made it famous. And like the entire crowd kind of roars with laughter, and Gates had no good response. He was just gave him this dirty look like USOB. So,
Bill's as smart as they come, but you wouldn't call him quick with a quick wit, right?
He didn't have a comeback for that. So
no,
yeah. Anyway, good. I do miss those events. We actually just had one not long ago. Last year, we had the 30-year anniversary of Citrix. And
yeah.
So, yeah, that's out there on the internet if people look. So we had David Henshaw, we had Mark Templeton, and we had Roger Roberts. It was pretty impressive.
I watched that. That's I joined Citrix in 2001, but I started doing Citrix work in the late 90s and mid to late 90s, and it's been spent more time doing Citrix, being part of the Citrix ecosystem than I've been alive, right? It's a huge part of my my existence. I always say I'm mad at you guys for changing the colors, because I always say my blood is Citrix.red.
Yeah, right. So how do you like, well, aside from the colors, how do you like the new logo?
That's a very good question, Chris. And at first I did not like it. But then I realized, I thought to myself, I went back to iOS, I think it was 5 or 6, when they changed from the rounded design to the flat design.
Yep.
I remember how much I hated the flat design, and how I was like, why, this is awful, and this is so beautiful. And so I said to myself, don't hate it yet. Give it some time. Because if I look back to the old, iOS 5 and earlier, I'm like, oh my God, that's awful.
Yeah, right.
And so now that I look at it, I like it much better. The problem with something like Citrix being such an old, to me, iconic logo, it's difficult to change it without sort of feeling like some of your, DNA has changed, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely more modern. If you look at the old logo now, you sort of see it dated, right?
Yeah.
And the new one doesn't. So it's really difficult to answer it. I like it more than I did. I give it that. And like I said, when I look at the old one, I definitely see a dated logo.
Well, for anybody listening, that give it a chance. If you don't love the new one, it might grow on you, just like Doug. And one of the things I like actually about it, and one of the things they did it for was where you can shorten it all the way down to just the X with the dot over it.
Yeah.
Where you couldn't really do that, with a Citrix logo, to have it, that small. You couldn't really tell, anything distinctive.
That's true.
You had to spell it out. Whereas just the X, the subset of the the logo, can be useful for a bunch of reasons.
Well, the old IGA client had the in the system tray, it just the eye with in a bouncing dot. Remember?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's true. That goes way back. You're right.
Yeah, I always thought
that was useful, right?
Yeah, it's totally, well, you knew something was happening, you knew it was connecting or what have you, right? And I always thought that the perfect commercial was the eyes bouncing, the camera pans out, and here's a lady or a man working from home, or let's say it's a lady working from home. She's cradling her baby, and and then the eye stops bouncing, and she says, "Gee, thank you, Citrix. Without you, I wouldn't have the ability to work from home." Right, and take care of my baby in this crucial time, or the man that's doing something, right?
Yeah,
and
right.
I always thought that would be cool, and then I took it to the next extreme, where the dot was called Ed I. And Ed I comes out and says, "No problem.
Yeah.
Citrix is the most secure way to compute anywhere, anyplace, anytime." Or something like that.
Yeah, right. I like both those ideas, and I've kind of experienced the scenario you talked about earlier. Where somebody I just ran into, with small talk, and they said, "Oh, you work for Citrix? I love that. Then that let me work from home." Like, that's before everybody worked from home.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Now it's kind of commonplace, but it's certainly still really relevant, or especially relevant now.
You got it. I mean, it's such a shame that we have COVID in every way, right? But at the same time, it's sort of bittersweet for us old Citrix guys that say, we were right. We told you,
Right.
and you look at the customers that were fully engaged with Citrix, or at least enough engaged with Citrix that they could burst up, and they didn't have the problems that the other folks had per se, right?
Yeah.
It's just,
right.
I always said it's a better way to compute.
Yep.
And I think COVID unfortunately proved it, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Chris, I have one more question for you, if you can take the time for me. You guys just bought a company for $2 billion. Can you explain this?
Yeah, that was a bunch of money, right?
Oh my! I mean, people thought ZenSource was expensive, right?
Yeah, right.
So Claudio can now stay quiet about it. The ZenSource, I always thought ZenSource was a great acquisition. By the way, I was I was very pro on ZenSource.
Yeah, and that certainly was strategic for us, and continues to
yeah,
be.
I thoroughly.
Yeah. So what we the motivation, quite frankly, is our BHAG, so our big, hairy, audacious goal is we want to be the preferred platform for 1 billion users. Like, right now we've got about 100 million Citrix users on a regular basis, based on our licenses and the volume of employees that we've touched out there. But there's probably like 2 billion workers out in the world, and over 1 billion office workers, and we want to be that de facto standard for them. And when you look at what it takes to do that, we've got to go beyond just virtualization.
Sure.
So virtualization is a great secure platform and a better way to compute, as you mentioned, for lots of use cases and lots of users. But what we recognize is the world is still bigger than that. And there's still lots of folks that are using PCs or laptops and running locally and running web apps. And more we see the world running SaaS apps. SaaS is becoming more and more of a de facto standard for organizations to not necessarily buy the infrastructure for the data centers and essentially just rent it, whether they're renting it in a public cloud or buying it as a service. And so what we're also seeing at the same time is the business model, the SaaS business model, is a good business model, both in terms of it's predictable and you don't get into these end of quarter, end of year rushes like you would with traditional software. You can have a more predictable revenue stream and a a longer term engagement with customers, but you have to earn that engagement as well, because it's easy for customers to switch if you have a SaaS offering. So as you know, what we're doing is we're transitioning our traditional on-prem and perpetual licensing over to SaaS. It turns out Wall Street likes that better as well, because of the fact that you've got this predictable revenue and margin versus a unpredictable kind of stream. And so when we're also looking beyond SaaS, or as part of the SaaS migration, is to productivity and what can make employees more productive, and that's especially true in this current COVID world, and what we anticipate post-COVID is the hybrid world of some in the office and some remote. And so we looked around at what software services that are horizontal, where they've got an opportunity to touch a lot of people, that are not really owned yet. That it's not like Teams communications, or it's not like spreadsheets, or things that people use every day. And so in looking at that, what are those productivity tools where there's still room for improvement, and a lot of that comes around in our world, and something that Reich has done a great job with is around project management and task management. And that's even more important when people are working from home or in a hybrid scenario. You don't necessarily have the tops down manager managing everything. Teams have to work together collaboratively. You need software to better manage those projects, and Reich has done just an incredibly good job of carving out space in the SaaS environment for enterprise collaboration, project management, task management type of platform. They probably have a better marketing line for it, but that's kind of my view of it. And so we want a piece of that, and we think it complements our kind of the traditional delivery model of getting apps to employees. Big step we took 2 years ago is acquiring Sophos, where we not only can bring apps to employees, but we can carve up those apps. We can take the tasks out of those apps and turn them into micro apps, and turn them into notifications and to-dos that show up in an activity stream that you use to get your job done. And again, we see Reich as a great complement or extension of that, to say, all right, so if we're going to have an activity stream and a to-do list, not just for yourself, but for actively managed projects and for teams working together, making that part of your work environment that's in your face, quite frankly, all day, every day, is going to get us closer to that BHAG of 1 billion users, and make them not just more secure, but more productive.
Makes sense. I mean, at some point, I think VMware was very successful at this, right? That it's not just a hypervisor. And at some point, you have to sort of diversify with something that makes sense within your portfolio. And that's what you guys have done, right?
Yep.
At the end of the day.
This is true. So, yeah. Haven't closed the deal yet, but we're working. I use it every day. It's a really cool tool, and anybody can go kick the tires on it. They've got some free accounts and such. But I'm looking forward to when we can talk more about it once we've got some things integrated together and so forth.
Cool. Yeah, I threw it out to the IGEL community, and some people are like, "What? I've never heard of this." And then a few people said, "I've used it and I absolutely love it." Nobody said I've used it and I don't like it. It was like I've used it and it was the best, management or product management app ever.
Oh, that's good to hear. And so, yeah, we've heard some of those, but that's good to hear. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just ecstatic response from people that are not ecstatic responders.
Oh, really?
So, yes, good. Exactly.
Yeah. And it's sticky too, which I like. It's like, once you start using it, you're gonna keep that, SaaS subscription going because it really, makes you more productive, makes the team more productive. So. Yeah.
You got it. I use Todoist, and if you take away Todoist, my task management software, if you take away that, I will come after you with reckless abandon.
Right.
I mean, to me, that's the most important thing. Now, if I was working with a bunch of team, what this solution is, from what I've seen, I did a little bit of investigating. It seemed like, it's one of those things that once you're in it, you're in it for life. Yep. And it looked pretty solid. From what I know. And it's definitely something I'm interested in. So, yeah, cool stuff, Chris. Cool stuff. I wish you guys well with that. On that note, I won't take more of your time. So thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat with me and sharing, all this stuff with us. And can't wait to have you back on again. So it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Always a true pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. And I definitely look forward to these conversations, but I also look forward to some in person. Like hopefully there'll be a future synergy or summit or something where we can not only connect, but maybe do it in front of a crowd or something.
Oh boy, I can't wait. Does Citrix have any plans? I mean, you guys say anything, about, anything this year? Is it a guess, or is everything just canceled till next year now?
Yeah, the way it looks now is a next year thing.
Yeah.
Something changes, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's my guess too. I mean, if it's this year, you can't really plan it full because you're going to have, people that are just worried, right? And rightfully so. I wouldn't go if, the way it stands right now. Well, in Germany, we're still in lockdown, and they just extended the lockdown too, not because our numbers are high, because they're worried about the mutations. And I think that's smart. Yeah, and I think that's smart. Let's. I mean, Germany's a completely different case than the U.S. in every way, and the big problem is, if you open all this stuff up, that people go out and they act like idiots. So, might as well keep them locked down, and maybe we can get rid of this. So, and the vaccines are coming. So,
yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. As soon as I get vaccinated, I'm going to be on an airplane back home. I can't wait.
Back to normal-ish.
Do you think people well, we already discussed that. I'll let you go. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time, and have a great day until we talk again, or hopefully see each other again.
All right, Doug. Great to talk.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes another successful episode of DABCC Radio. Thank you so much, Chris Fleck. What do I say but what fun it is to chat with him. I'm already thinking about what he's working on and what his ideas for the pie. I have no clue. He's way smarter than I am. So what do I say but thank you again to Chris Fleck for taking the time. He's a very busy man, and trying to get on his calendar is a difficult thing. So for him to give us time is a real honor. And thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chris. So I hope you guys all enjoyed the episode. Definitely check out what IGEL is doing around the Raspberry Pi. I really love it because, I think very highly of what the Pi brings to market, and I love the casting. I love the Workspace Hub. I love the price to performance. I love all that stuff. It fills out our portfolio, but it really gives you as a customer a enterprise solution. When I mean enterprise solution, I mean a great operating system that's centrally managed, secure, and configured easily, and all that and more. And if you haven't checked out the IGEL solution, definitely do, because it's one of those things we can talk about until we're blue in the face. But once you see it, sort of like what Citrix was when the first time you saw it, and you thought, wow, I can do that? Really? And that's what we see when we show this off. And one of the sad parts about COVID is I'm not in front of people showing it to them. Our SEs aren't, salespeople aren't, we're not at Synergy, right? Nobody's at Synergy. So, definitely check out what we can do. Head over to IGEL.com and download it. Join the IGEL community, IGELcommunity.com/join. And I'll send you, I'll send you the software. It's that simple. On that note, thank you all for listening. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe. We're almost to the end of this. I feel it coming. I feel that we're going to get together soon. I know it. So thank you all for listening to DABCC Radio.
C-C?
D-A-B-B-C.
Say it again. D-A-B-C-C.
D-A-B-B-C.
Can you say it again? D-A-B-C-C.
D-A-B-B-C.
How about D-A-B-C-C?
D-A-B-B-C.
D-A-B-C-C.
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 D-A-B-C-C.